Hi, this is David Stein of Money for the Rest of Us.
And I'm Bret Stein at Money for the Rest of Us.
And today we're going to talk about whether one should buy or fix a car. Bret just went through this experience. He spent $8,000 to fix a car that's only worth $5,000. And he debated what to do. We're going to talk about that decision today to help you figure out whether you should fix your old car or go buy a new one. Bret, tell us exactly kind of what happened and how it's set up.
Absolutely. So my wife and we own a 2007 Subaru Outback Turbo. And we've owned it for about 5 years and have put a little over 70,000 miles on it in that time. It has about 145,000 miles right now. And like many Subarus, it's been leaking oil for years, which wasn't too big of an issue. But that oil leak started to increase rapidly. And so we knew that was a repair that was going to be coming up. And then at the same time, the turbo went out. So the car it wouldn't go very fast. It would peak at 50 miles per hour sometimes. Once it wouldn't go over 35 miles per hour. And so we knew the car was going to need extensive repairs. We took it to the shop and they quoted us at a little over $7,000 to do all of the repairs. But the problem is that the car was only actually worth about $5,000. And the most valuable part of the car at that point was the tires. Earlier in 2020, I'd put new winter tires on it, all-weather tires, and had paid about $1,000. And so if we were to sell the car, that was the most valuable part on it. And so we had to make a decision of whether to repair or to try to find a different car.
I remember when you called me up, you were driving and you showed me, or you put on the phone the sound that the car was making, and when turbos explode like it did or deteriorate, incredibly weird sounding car, something I had never heard of. How did you decide where to take the car to get repaired?
Well, we were sort of forced into that. When it was making that sound, we took it to a local shop that had helped us out a little bit before. We were in Flagstaff at the time, and they told us that the turbo was out, and they told us it would be about $2,500 to fix, but that the car could still drive. We knew we were going to be moving to Texas in the next few weeks, and so we wanted the car to be able to make it to Texas so that it could spend a lot longer in the shop without us needing to move soon. And that was the plan. They told us, yes, we think the car will make it to Texas. So after Christmas, we started driving to Texas, and we made it about 3 hours, and the car just stopped. It wouldn't go over 35 miles per hour on the interstate. It just kept getting slower and slower. So now I'm driving on the side of the interstate at 35 miles an hour, and I took this exit, and I went up over an overpass, and the car wouldn't go above 15 miles an hour. It was just done. And we called a tow truck, and we were waiting for it, and the car miraculously started working again, and we were able to drive it back to Tucson, where David lives. And we took it to a shop there that specialized in Japanese cars. And David was kind enough to let us borrow his car to finally make it the rest of the way to Texas, while the Subaru spent about 3 weeks in the shop.
So how did you decide to fix the car versus go buy a new one?
It's a good question. So the problem with buying a new car is it wasn't in our budget to be able to buy a new car. It was going to have to be a used car. And the other situation is we really like owning a car like a Subaru for two reasons. We do a lot of hiking, so we want to be able to drive out to hikes. And also, my wife and I move around a lot, and everything that we own needs to be able to fit inside the car. So while we probably could have bought a decent sedan, maybe a Corolla or a Camry, for $9,000, $10,000, getting a car that was going to fit our lifestyle and our needs, especially when it came to moving, was out of the budget. To get an equivalent car, had our Subaru been working, it would have cost us probably $13,000, and then we wouldn't have known what problems that car might have. Whereas with our Subaru, we knew exactly what problems we had, we knew how much it was going to fix, and we knew what level of repair the Subaru would be at after making that repair. So the question was, do we spend $8,000, $7,000 to $8,000 to fix a car that is not worth that? Or do we spend a lot more to buy a used car that we don't know what might be wrong with it coming up in the future? Or even leasing a car was another option we had.
Well, you made the decision. You ran through some of the numbers. Let's actually take a closer look at kind of that buy versus repair decision. If we look at, first off, Bret had a car that was worth $5,000, but then the turbo got destroyed. The tires were worth $1,000, so he had a $4,000 loss. But that's a sunk cost. A sunk cost is something that you just can't get it back, and so it shouldn't impact your decision. But if you look, Subaru right now is offering a 3-year, 30,000-mile lease for a total of $15,000. So it's $2,500 due at signing plus $250 per month. And so the total all in is about $11,500. But the other thing is right now, Bret, with his insurance, explain how your insurance is working currently.
Our insurance right now, we have just liability insurance, and it costs $388 every 6 months. If we were to get full coverage for our car now, that price would go up to $1,003 every 6 months. And if we had leased a car, we would be required to get full insurance that would insure both liability and the vehicle itself.
Got it. So let's go back to the example then. So auto insurance, in our example, we're going to assume it's going to cost about $1,166 additional per year for the full coverage insurance. So over the life of the lease, 3-year lease, about $3,500. So the total lease cost, including insurance and the lease payments, $15,000. The way to look at the break even then is to decide, Bret and Jessica could have just repaired the car. It would have cost $8,000. It did cost $8,000. But we're trying to keep the all-in cost, their 3-year cost of ownership, less than $15,000. And so the way to look at that is they could have another $9,500 in repairs over the next 3 years. And if they can keep the repairs less than $9,500, then they would be better off keeping their current car versus leasing a new one. And that's assuming at the end of 3 years, the car is worth $2,500. The alternative was to purchase a used car, and for $9,000, they could have gotten a car, I think like a 2010 or 2011 Subaru. In that case, if they could keep their 3-year repair costs less than $11,000, assuming the car's worth $5,000 at the end of the 3-year lease or at the end of the 3-year period, then they would be better off. But what's challenging about that, wouldn't you agree, Bret, is knowing, will the car break? The lease actually gives you the security of downside protection. So for $15,000, you know you don't have to repair the car. And that's something LaPrelle and I did when we were first married. We did start leasing cars because I hated when cars broke and the uncertainty of being stranded on the side of the road.
Correct. And leasing was certainly an option to be able to get rid of that worry for us, but it was too much. It was more than we were looking for at the time. And buying a used car, as you said, we don't know what's wrong with it. And particularly if we had bought a Subaru, a lot of Subarus have this problem of leaking oil through the head gaskets. And that's a very expensive repair. And that's where a lot of the money for our repair went into. If we had bought a used Subaru, it might have that same gasket leaking problem that we were trying to fix in our current Subaru and our current car.
That makes sense. Now, didn't you get a warranty with your repair?
Absolutely. We called around quite a bit asking about who had a really good warranty for the work that was done. That was something we were really concerned about. And the warranty that we ended up with was a 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty. And so if any of the things that were done were fixed, had any problems, and there was a lot of things that we fixed, hose, head gaskets, the turbo, then that would be warranted. And it was a nationwide warranty with anybody that was part of that network. And that warranty was even better than if we had taken the car and had a Subaru dealership fix it. And that gave us a lot of security because, well, we knew that we could put a lot more miles on the car. And the shop that did the work for us, they were very thorough, they were very kind, and they say that they believe the car should last another 100,000 miles easily. And we feel really good about the decision that we made because of that warranty we have for the next 36,000 miles, but that the life of the car should have been extended even beyond that.
So the car got fixed. Laprelle and I drove the car to Texas, and it broke. And we got stranded on the side of the road during the worst winter storm Texas has had since 1989. How did you feel, Bret, when I called you stranded, that your car that you just spent $8,000 repairing was no longer working?
It was very frustrating. And it made me wonder, was it worth it to spend at the time the about $7,500 that we had currently paid to fix the car? However, the way it broke down wasn't too shocking for me. The alternator went out, and we had been having some electrical problems in the car on longer drives. And luckily, alternators are pretty easy to fix, and it only cost about $170 to buy a new alternator. Of course, we were getting close to our cap of what we had thought would be worth it to spend on the car, and we had to think about that. But again, the sunk costs here aren't relevant in the decision going forward. And so we had to ask, is it worth fixing our car for $170 to get it running again? And the answer was obviously yes. And my father-in-law and I were able to drive out and to repair the alternator, just put in a new one in about 30 minutes. And the car's worked pretty well since then. It still has its quirks, but it's run significantly better than it has in months.
And notice who fixed the car. Like I was there. I did not fix the car. And that's one thing I've been impressed with Bret. He has learned to fix his car, something his father did not teach him how to do. So let's take a look at some key takeaways from this decision of whether to buy a new car or fix a really old one. First, we have to run the numbers. Understand, well, what's the cost going to be to repair, and perhaps future repairs, which are somewhat unknowable. It's certainly unknowable. Compare that, though, to the leasing or buying of a new car, where because of the warranty, you have more certainty. It's important to understand the overall numbers, including what is your current car costing you. Something I know Bret does and Laprelle and I do is to calculate the cost per mile to own a car. I think with Bret, what has been the cost for the Subaru prior to this big repair?
We don't keep track of it all the time, but when we've done the back math, as best we can figure it, it cost us, I think, around 20 or 25 cents per mile, which is lower than the average that is done on these sort of studies.
Okay, so that's pretty good. A lot of our cars that we've owned over their life has been 30 cents or so per mile. But when we leased a car, it was 60 cents a mile. When we had a lemon of a car, a BMW 650, it ended up costing $1 a mile. So it's important to kind of understand that overall cost, run the numbers in deciding whether to lease or buy. Next then is just acknowledge the uncertainties. The uncertainties of we don't know what that future repair cost is going to be. We can run the numbers, but part of owning an old car is the uncertainty that it will break. How have you been able to overcome that uncertainty, Bret?
I think part of it is I try to just accept that that's part of owning a car, is that there's going to be unexpected repairs, and we try to budget for that, and we set money aside accordingly. I also try to do as many of the repairs myself as I can, and I've been really lucky to know people who've been willing to teach me, and I continue to try to learn more. And so that saved me a lot of money, such as in 2020 when I needed to replace all of the brakes on my car, and I was able to do that myself instead of having the dealership charge the hundreds of dollars that they were going to do.
Well, the third thing then is just sunk costs are irrelevant. The fact that Bret and Jessica had lost $4,000 on the car didn't factor into the decision to repair it. At this point, it's a brand new decision whether to buy or fix, and they determined that it potentially will be more cost effective to fix the car, again, if they can keep those repair costs down. And then finally, we want to factor in the total cost of ownership of the car, not just the payment, not just the repairs, but also the cost of insurance. The fact that with a newer car, it will cost more to insure, significantly more in their case, because they don't have full coverage on their car. If they get in a wreck, the insurance company will not pay to fix their car, just whoever happens if they happen to run into somebody, their car, which is another decision. At some point, the car becomes worth not so much money, in this case, $5,000, that it's cheaper to just get liability coverage on insurance and not pay the full coverage. What was that difference between full coverage and the liability for your current policy?
Currently, for every 6 months, we pay $388, and for full coverage, it would have been $1,003. So that's the difference of around $1,200 a year versus liability and full coverage.
Exactly, and this is for a car that's worth $5,000.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
and it's kind of again, we need to factor in those total ownership. So those are our key takeaways. Anything else, Bret?
Maybe one other would be, I think I'm just going to spend more time biking because the repairs are much cheaper and the upkeep cost is much cheaper.
Well, great. Well, that's our video on whether to buy or fix an old car. If you have any other questions or comments, please put them below. Please subscribe to our channel, and thanks for watching.